One.
So we're going to get to the bottom of this Charlottesville statement because it's never presented in a fulsome way by the media. It's always hit and run. Turn up your volume. Let's go. We're going to expose the media for what the media are. Again, in the middle of this press conference. Trump. Let's see. He was having a press conference with CEOs and so forth. And he says, the reporter, the CEO of Walmart said, "You missed a critical opportunity to help bring the country together. Did you?" "Not at all," he says. "I think the country, look, you take a look. I've created over 1 million jobs since I've been president. The country is booming. The stock market's setting records. We have the highest employment numbers we've ever had in the history of our country. We're doing record business. We have the highest levels of enthusiasm." So the head of Walmart, who I know, who's a very nice guy, was making a political statement. I mean, I would do it the same way. You know why? Because I want to make sure when I make a statement that the statement is correct. And there was no way of making a correct statement that early. I had to see the facts. Unlike a lot of reporters. I didn't know David Duke was there. I wanted to see the facts. And the facts, as they started coming out, were very well stated. In fact, everybody said his statement was beautiful. If you would have made it sooner, that would have been good. But I couldn't have made it sooner because I didn't know all the facts. So he's saying this over and over again. Frankly, people still don't know all the facts. It was very important. Excuse me. He's being interrupted. It was very important to me to get the facts out correctly because I would have made a fast statement. And the first statement was made without knowing much other than what we were seeing. The second statement was made after we had knowledge, with great knowledge. There are still things, there are still things that people don't know. I want to make a statement with knowledge. I wanted to know the facts, okay? Reporter, 2 questions. Was this terrorism? And can you tell us how you are feeling about your chief strategist, Steve Bannon? Well, what did Steve Bannon have to do with anything? Trump, I think the driver of the car is a disgrace to himself, his family, and this country. And that is, you can call it terrorism, you can call it murder, you can call it whatever you want. I would just call it as the fastest one to come up with a good verdict. That's what I'd call it. And there is a question. Is it murder? Is it terrorism? Then you get into legal semantics. The driver of the car is a murderer. And what he did was horrible. Inexcusable. Can you tell us how you're feeling about your chief strategist, Mr. Bannon? Can you talk about that? Steve Bannon? I never spoke to Steve Bannon about it. Reporter, can you tell us broadly about, can you still have confidence in Steve? So they get into Bannon. Let's see here. Trump. Senator McCain said that the alt-right is behind these attacks, and he linked that same group to those that perpetrated the attack in Charlottesville. Trump. Well, I don't know. I can't tell you. I'm sure Senator McCain must know what he's talking about. But when you say the alt-right, define the alt-right to me. You define it. Go ahead. Define it for me. Come on, let's go. Senator McCain defined them as the same group. Trump. Okay. What about the alt-left that came charging in? Excuse me. What about the alt-left? They came charging at the, as you say, alt-right. Do they have any semblance of guilt? What about this? What about the fact that they came charging in? He's talking about Antifa. They came charging with clubs in their hands, swinging clubs. Do they have any problem? I think they do. And the reporters are yelling, and they say indistinctively, so they're yelling over each other. Trump, as far as I'm concerned, that was a horrible, horrible day. Wait a minute. I'm not finished. Fake news. That was a horrible day. Reporters keep yelling indistinctively. The transcript says, Trump, I will tell you something. I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you had a group on one side that was bad. You had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit. They were very, very violent. Reporter, do you think what you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis? Those people, all those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis. Believe me, not all those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Now, remember what was going on. People were protesting the pulling down of a certain Confederate statue. And, of course, you had the neo-Nazis and the Klan that showed up. You had Antifa show up, but you actually had people earnestly protesting one way or the other. That's what he's talking about. They weren't all neo-Nazis, and they weren't all Antifa. Let's see here. Those people, and the reporter, well, white nationalists, Trump, those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue of Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me. And you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know, if you are honest reporters, which in many cases you're not, many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? Is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? Which is a perfectly legitimate statement. We used to call this actually a civil libertarian statement. Free speech. Those statues aren't necessarily there to honor some of these people. Those statues are there because that's our history. It goes on. Does the statue, the reporter asked, does the statue of Robert E. Lee stay up? Trump, I would say that it's up to the local town, community, or federal government, depending on where it's located. Are you against the Confederacy? Listen to these questions by these reporters. On race relations in America, the reporter says, do you think things have gotten worse or better since you took office with regard to race relationships? Trump, I think they've gotten... They never asked this of Obama, who was race baiting left and right and turning American against American. Do you notice? But let's go on. And notice they'll never say it to Ocasio-Cortez or Tlaib or Omar. Never. They'll never be questioned. And yet they're flat-out bigots, and they're proud of it. Trump, I think they've gotten better or the same. Look, they've been frayed for a long time, and you can ask President Obama about that because he'd make speeches about it. I believe that the fact that I brought in, it will soon be millions of jobs. You see where companies are moving back into our country. I think that's going to have a tremendous positive impact on race relations. We have companies coming back into our country. We have 2 car companies that just announced. We have Foxconn in Wisconsin just announced. We have many companies. I'd say pouring back into the country, I think that's going to have a huge positive impact on race relations. You know why? It's jobs. What people now want, they want jobs. They want great jobs with good pay. And when they have that, you watch how race relations will be. And I'll tell you, we're spending a lot of money on the inner cities. We're fixing the inner cities. We're doing far more than anybody has done with respect to inner cities. It's a priority for me, and it's very important. Reporter, Mr. President, are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane? Listen to this. Trump, I am not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and a group on the other. And they came at each other with clubs, and it was a vicious, horrible, and it was horrible thing to watch. But there's another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. And again, he means Antifa. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. Reporter, you said there was hatred and violence on both sides. Trump, I think there is blame, yes. I think there's blame on both sides. You look at it. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it. And you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say so. Reporter, the neo-Nazis started this thing. They showed up in Charlottesville. Trump, excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis. In other words, right in, I'm a neo-Nazi. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down, very, very important statue, and the remaining of in the park, and the renaming of the park from Robert E. Lee to another name. Reporter, George Washington and Robert E. Lee are not the same. Oh, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to... So Trump is making the case for not tearing down these statues. He's not making the case for the Klan or the neo-Nazis. Is he, Mr. Producer? He's rejecting them. But he's saying there's good people on both sides. He means the protesters. He doesn't mean the Klansmen and the neo-Nazis and Antifa. It couldn't be more clear. Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down his statue? He was a major slave owner. Are we going to take down his statue? You know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group, other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you had troublemakers. And you see them come with black outfits and Antifa again, and with helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group, too. Reporter, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press had treated white nationalists unfairly? Now look how they try and taunt him and put words in his mouth. When I return, I will continue. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.